Welcome to another episode of Awaken Life Radio. My name is Narayani Gaya. I am your host. And today we have Carrie Coppola from Salt Lake City, a,
Ooh,
a beautiful yoga teacher and healer and intuitive whom I connected with, we don't know, sometime in the past and through social media, a soul sister for sure. And today we're going to be talking about what it really means to awaken joy in your life and in your body, and the difference between thinking about it and living it. And I'm really curious what's going to come up. If you guys are checking us out today and you pop in, share any questions that you have or comments. If you're listening in the future now, there's a thread that you can chime in on. How you doing today, Carrie? It took us a second to get past the tech, but we're here. We did it.
we did it, and I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
I'm grateful to be here. Yeah,
you're
this
welcome.
is
You're welcome. I love. Excuse me. I love talking about all things spirituality and embodiment because people are really waking up in these times. And when I first created my podcast, it was like the end of 2020, launched the podcast. It was really about kind of the things that you stand for. It's about cultivating intuition, getting in the flow with your life, and really integrating awakening. Really starting to put into not regular, but understandable layman's terms some of the spiritual concepts and teachings that have really shaped my path and have shaped the path of many of my colleagues like you, my mentors and elders over the last several decades. As in the West, we have um, we've been awakening. My guru Swami Satchidananda came
mm,
in like the year came in 1968 to and was 69 and was at Woodstock. He was brought by Peter Max,
mhm.
and he had a million kids on LSD chanting Om. Um, I recently met the person who has like the original photograph. She was like showing me in her house. She's like, "Look," I'm like, "Oh my God!" Of the guru, many people might know. He's sitting on the stage, and there's like a million in orange with people, and everyone's anyway. And those seeds have been planted. Pramsahanda Yogananda came in the 1800s. Not Yogananda Ji. Yogananda Ji came in the 20s, but the who came? The Parliament of World Religions. There was it Pramsahanda Yogananda? I'll have to look that up.
Mm,
But there was the original. I'm going to look it up. Um, seeds were planted over 100 years ago in the West for yogic teachings, and the one of the beautiful things that and I'm going to follow this with a question. The beautiful thing that I love that I found in studying yoga and Vedanta and the lineages of yoga is that as Sanatan Dharma, that the yogic teachings embrace all traditions and cultures. So there's not a our way or the highway attitude or an us and them. Our altar has this image, which is the all faiths image, which is like the yantra for you can't really see it right now, but the integral yoga yantra has
mhm.
has altars to world religion. And so I'm curious for you about how kind of yoga found you, just to kind of open it up and be
Mm.
spontaneous here, how yoga found you and how you've been able to integrate it in any way into your spiritual, what it is that kind of has affected you on your spiritual path from yoga. Were you raised religious? Did you do yoga when you were younger? Like how is yoga um, dictated your spiritual path, if you want to share about that? And and then I want to talk about like yoga in Salt Lake City because it's a lot of Mormons. It's a very interesting culture out there. So I'd
Yes.
be very curious about how, because, and the reason is because a big thing on this podcast is talking about supporting people that are awakening to share their spiritual heart with the world and bhakti yoga and service. And and how we can do that sustainably, like live our purpose. I know you have that, on your site. You help people with that too. So it's very interesting to talk story about like, well, how have you been able to like take this without um, just repeating what you're told, like to integrate it and have it be your own. Not that it's your own, but you know how to integrate into your day-to-day life. Does that make sense? Is that
Mhm.
question okay?
It's a big question. Yes.
I like to start with big questions because
Yes, I
it
love it.
opens up the whole container. Yeah.
Absolutely, because that's where it begins, you know. So yeah,
Mm,
yoga found me at a time in my life when I was things were falling apart. You know, I was going through a divorce. My son was struggling. I had um, I had mono. I got mono. I couldn't do the things that, you know, running had been my outlet to just clear me and ground me, and I couldn't do any of that. And I had an intuitively just this feeling that I needed to do yoga, you know. And so my son and I were having dinner outside one day, and I saw the sign about yoga. And um, you know, the funny part of the story is I went over to the sign that said opening soon, and I opened the door, and there's this big staircase going up, and at the top were these two blonde, beautiful yogis. And I'm like, oh, please don't let it be this place. Please. And it was this place, you know, and they said, we're opening soon and come. And so I looked it up, and it was like they honored teachers. I was teaching at a prevention education at that time, and single parents. And I'd been a single parent
mm,
really, you know, for since my son was born. And so I thought, this is my place. And so I showed up the first day, and
mm,
I knew it was where I was meant to be.
mhm.
You know, I
As a
said,
student, you showed
as
up as
a
a
student, I showed
right.
up.
But
Hmm.
you were already a natural teacher, so you were already teaching. And
Yep.
I think we have archetypes of being, and like teaching is one of them. So you were already a
Hmm.
teacher, and they specifically said like they gave discounts for teachers and single moms or something like that. They
Yeah.
specifically named that. That is so interesting. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people that grew up in white culture that are used to having access don't really understand um, how much it makes a difference to say, you know, the white patriarchal privilege culture. I don't have another way to name that right now, but if you know what
Right.
I mean, you know what I mean.
Hmm.
That don't necessarily know how powerful it is when you name like somebody's struggle or somebody's identity that maybe is marginalized or doesn't have as much access. Like you don't really understand that until you tell a story like that. So
Right.
that's really cool. That's like first nugget, big nugget.
Mhm.
So then you started practicing as a
Yeah, and
student.
that first night on my mat, you know, I
Mhm.
knew what I was there for, to let go. And that was very clear to me. And when I, you know, went into Shavasana, I had just that moment in Shavasana that like everything is going to be okay, you know. And that was the beginning for me of learning. I didn't know this at the time, but learning how to embody the moments that I was in, you know. And I had been on a spiritual path. I'm in recovery, but that was what had been missing for me, is like really learning how to be in my body. And
Yeah,
it's frightening, you know. But I think that's the key here, is that as we learn about embodiment and learn how to be embodied, it's little by slowly, you know. And that's what we can learn, because I think my mind says, I've got to do all this. I'm going to feel all this stuff. It's going to overwhelm you. It just gives me all these fears. But if I just do a breath at a time, if I just put
hmm
my feet on the ground in this moment, if I have somebody helping me learn how to just stay with all the stuff that I've been running away from, you know, it's powerful.
it's really powerful. I'm flashing on when I was living in New York City in the 90s in massage school, and there was the Shivananda Yoga Center, and they're like the sister yoga lineage to our yoga lineage. And so I went over
Mhm.
there. I don't even know what was going on, but I remember that Shavasana where I bawled my
Mm.
eyes out. It was probably like just heartbreak, like dating issues, like heartbreak, which is the story of my life. You know, like, and I just wept. And then I found out it's a thing. People cry on the yoga mat. It's a healing, especially in the beginning. It's like you you have such a safe. I have the chills. Damn, I should start teaching yoga again. It's such a beautiful. Actually, I'm talking with someone about that on Monday. It's such a beautiful practice of creating a safe container. I had somebody say to me, my friend Naomi, she's on a recent interview. Naomi Charampal, she's a Kundalini yoga teacher in Santa Cruz. She's great. It's a fun. We talk about Kundalini awakening. It's an interesting.
Mm.
I'll share it with you if you want. It's very interesting, I think. But she reminded me. She's like, I went to your yoga class, with the sound healer, like when I first met you 12 years ago. She goes, and she gave me some kind of compliment about like the energy of the place, of the room and the safety. And like she felt so held and seen. And I would have never known that at all had she not told me. And it really just reminded me of that deep value of feeling safe and feeling connected.
Mm.
And sometimes it's such a humble path as a yoga teacher because there's not big money.
Mm-mm.
There's not big money. Very few people make it as celebrity yoga teachers, and those people that do have to have a certain kind of a drive and diligence. They don't have a lot of flexibility to change their schedule or shift things. They have to be like very hard and structured. Um, and yet the reward is so great. I remember one other story, and then I want to ask you another question where I Swami Satchidananda was alive, and it was a teacher reunion at Yogaville, and it was in like 2001, and we were in a small room with him, and and it was an opportunity to thank him for how his teachings have affected our lives. And at that point, I was like 30, 31. I hadn't even had big the big awakening I was about to have 9 months later. Just gotten my mantra, and they said, go and tell him what anything you want to say, any thank you. And people were like, oh, I was part of the hospital programs. I helped heal AIDS and recovery and this injury. I never thought I could have it. And all I had was like this joy of it's like, what have I done? I hadn't done many big things at all yet. And there was this 72-year-old teacher who I taught to put her ankle under her knee in sun salutation, and she was a private client, and she wasn't even a private client. She was the only one coming to my class in my mountain yoga class. That's what she
Mhm.
was. So I was basically paying to teach her.
Yeah.
And she was one of the most beautiful people I ever met. And she was so grateful to get solid foundations that after 20 years of not knowing how to be steady in a lunge, that it rocked her world, and I think we cried. Like it was such, and I
Mm.
couldn't even go and tell my teacher that. Now I understand that would have made a difference in the room for me to tell how beautiful, just because everyone started was like all the big things. But like the service of being a healer and a yoga teacher, as much as we want to like get well known and like it's a very deeply humble and rewarding path. So much that even to say it's humble makes it not humble. But
Mhm.
it's can you talk about how teaching has really grown you as a person and some of the big things that you've learned that you think that newer teachers would really benefit to understand? If you could go back and tell when you first started teaching kind of what you've learned and kind of what to avoid. Is there anything? I know I'm putting you on the spot here. Is
Yeah.
there like any like couple of big things that really jump out when it comes to supporting others with this work that you wish that you knew?
Mm. Wow. That, I think trusting ourselves, and I have done that. And I think that it's just growing in that constantly. Um, more of my story. From that day that yoga found me, I ended up, continuing my yoga practice, working at that studio, going to teacher training, opening my own studio, and I think the thing that I find uh, so much through that journey and with myself and what you were talking about of being humble, it's that that new teachers come in, and there's a teaching is gives you so much, it gives you so much, just like the people that you're teaching. And so that starts to open for new teachers. And I see them giving up on themselves quickly. I see them giving into, they're having one person in their class, and that doesn't feel like it's enough, and just trusting, this is what I say, whoever shows up is supposed to be there with me. And I trust the universe that that's who's supposed to be there,
Yeah.
and so it's allowing yourself to have that big of a space of trust, and that grounded in the moment, being embodied in the moment, to understand that you've taken on this task of being a channel for this beautiful, powerful practice, and allowing it to move through you as much as you're moving through it, as you bring it into the world, allowing it to open you,
Yeah.
and again, just trusting that huge process of being here. I think we're in this culture, and, as we talked about a little bit as we began, that to be embodied, it brings patience to you. And we're not really a patient. We want things quickly. We want things now. We want it yesterday, as I talk about. And so I think that is like developing that trust in yourself little by slowly, just as you do with the people that you're teaching.
Yeah, it's I don't have kids. You apparently are a mom.
Yes.
And so sometimes I see these lessons being, as a teacher and a practitioner, akin to parenting. So,
Mm.
right. So when you're speaking, I'm hearing, oh yeah, like just like you would with your children, they get to teach you patience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But
Mm-hmm.
let's name that piece around around bypassing that we didn't name yet, because so I'm a new teacher, say, and there's two people in my class, and you tell me to trust, but in my body I feel away. I feel um, like the universe isn't supporting me to do this as a career. Very, very common. Very
Mm-hmm.
common, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and we're not the first generation. It started in the 70s too, when the gurus were like, just abandon everything and come join me. And then you had
Yeah.
10 people that became monks, and the rest of everybody were like, but how do we live if we're not,
Mm-hmm.
monks?
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you support or encourage people to navigate through the stuff that does arise as a result of day to day living without? Because there's been a lot of realization that there are a lot of spiritual people, and I did it in the beginning of my path. I understand the value of bypassing or saying, let's just trust, because it helps the mind. You could go from the top down, you can go from the bottom up, you can go from the out in, or that however you navigate healing.
Mm.
But there's a cost of not being authentic, and also people will feel that lack of authenticity. So how do you navigate through the negative emotional responses to life, which are human,
Mm-hmm.
particularly like for, say, teachers and people who want to teach yoga, since we're going a little bit down that angle,
Mm-hmm.
to stay with it and be patient when those two people are not paying the bills.
Mm. Well, I always, I would tell my people that were in my teacher training, don't quit your day job. I mean, that, like, I've had to have more than one job, doing this, and holding lots of hats while we're doing this. And so I want to, go back and say, when I'm saying just trust it, I didn't mean it in a way of like, you know, uh, um, bypass anything. I meant
Mhm.
trust this moment. Okay. And so you're coming out of class, you have that one person, you're wondering why, you feel the way you do. And that's where then we put our own practice. That's where we become embodied in that moment. So what's really going on with you?
Okay. Okay.
What's
That's
really going on with you?
interesting.
What's your fear? Because you might have 20 people in your class and you still get that same, like,
It's not
So
okay, or it's not right, or it should be different.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
And I can't hold space for this, I mean, all the fears. That's what's going to come up, because yoga is such a powerful practice. And I guess that's what I was trying to say, that like when you're the teacher, your practice is happening as you're teaching, your practice is
Mm.
happening as you're teaching. And so that's where I would guide people. It's like, let's trust that what's coming up for you here in this moment, as you're teaching, as you're beginning this path of teaching, and start to look at your fears, start to look at your old beliefs about, well, who am I to be doing this? You know, that's the big one. Look at the feelings that are coming up. Is there sadness? Is there grief? Is there, you know, because that's what it will open for you. And so if we've put ourselves in the teacher position, and that somehow means we're above here, it's like, this is how I've always taught. No, I'm right here with you. We are just right here, you know, and I'm sharing this experience that I have, you know, being a channel, being, you know, being guided by this, but I'm doing my own work at the same moment, you know.
You know, I feel like this is so beautiful. A couple of things that you said that I wish more people would know. By the way, great content pieces to elaborate on, or articles to write about, or blogs, things to blog about, which is one, don't quit your day job, babe. Like, don't believe that all the influencers that you see is everybody. A lot of people have a lot more advantages than they talk about, or different kinds of things that happen, or that they're willing to do that you may not be willing to do to get to those positions. So don't quit your day job, right? So be realistic. Most people do not make a living as a yoga teacher probably anywhere. Most people do not. Not
Right.
most people do, and you don't. Most people do not. The people that I know that do, they go hard. Like I said, they practice every day. They teach. They give it 1,000,000,000%. Maybe don't even have kids. A lot of them. So there's that. And then to practice as you speak, as you teach. That the teaching is not separate from the practice. Which I want to just transfer for those of you listening who are not actually yoga teachers. You may be a chef, or you might be a professional who works at I don't know, cell phone store, or you might be another kind of healing artist, or a musician. That that is your off the mat world too. That's a place to practice too. And what you're saying is the practice is not bypassing and just forgetting that it's a problem, but to be present with whatever is coming up for you, and trust that the person in front of you or the people are the divine right people for you to do your practice. And so do your practice in that moment and shift, but not shift out of your body. Stay present with what's there. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a whole other piece that's coming to mind, and this could be a fun angle to go into, which has to do with why yoga brings up so much, and the natural inkling to bypass, which I also found in my Native American family and my Dakota family, and spending time with them, and spending some time in those kind of ceremonies and in traditional ceremonies, and getting to know um, about the depth of suffering with native people, and also the accelerated spiritual access that they have as well, as family. For my family, my Dakota family, who adopted me, their gifts are like nobody I've ever met as a collective, and their psychic abilities and their healing abilities, and their dreaming together, like it's insane. It's very, very advanced, and without plant medicine. Okay. Although whatever, the different kind, not psychotropic plant, they don't do psychotropic plant medicine. There's other plant medicine for sure. But and understanding that the trauma has helped awaken a higher seeking, right? So what does that mean? So as kids, you know this, but I'm naming it for our listeners. As kids, if it's not safe, we go places, right?
Yeah.
Or we contract and we hide, but very, very commonly. And so, like, most of us didn't get all of our needs met. If everything was perfect, we wouldn't even incarnate, right? So that the spiritual development or the seeking comes from a prayer. I remember for me, very consciously, when I was 21 and at 20, and I was in college, and I was really in love for the first time. And I was really in love. I was started being very sexually active with a partner. I was very in love, and I had this longing that I didn't understand when I wasn't with him. It was this Kundalini energy, really. It was like this sexual energy, but it was also emotional. And I started writing poetry. So we talked about how I'd like to hear you start writing poetry. And I started writing poetry, not like you, where I'd publish, but just on my own. And I don't know, no comparison necessary, but you know, just as a form of expression and journaling. And I was like yearning for the light. I always worked with trees. So I wrote this poem about being a tree, and the tree was like yearning for the sun so that it can grow.
Mm.
And so I was like feeling this longing, and it really started, a lot of heartbreak started my spiritual path. Um, and I feel like that desire to, and then I started meditating and praying and psychedelic drugs. And like for me in my early 20s, where it all that kind of opened up my senses, my abilities to cultivate my psychic abilities, my healing abilities, my third eye. And eventually it was presented like a bypass. So it was like, oh, look at you, all like you're so spiritual. But my parents are like, get a job. I'm like, I will in the divine right time. And they're like, no, get a job now. I don't care. So I was like, all right. So I started waitressing and like doing whatever it took until I felt myself on my path going to massage school in 1997.
Mm.
You know, and that was partly because I was so driven by something, because I was naturally a healer because I needed the healing. And then 3 years later, I realized, oh, I'm the one who needs touch. I'm doing this because I'm doing what I often we do what we need and we don't even realize. Then we go, oh, wow, that's me who wanted that, right? Have you had experiences where you're like suffering? Do you feel driven by your suffering? Like, has it dictated your writing with your book and with your poetry and like how you share? Can you relate with what I'm saying around like the spiritual longing and then like it's probably very similar, huh? Like the
Mm.
grounding into your
Yeah,
body and the disconnect. Yeah. I'd love to hear
absolutely.
some of
That,
your
because
story.
that's what it is,
Mhm.
you know. I mean, it's like I said, that first time on my mat, it was that I need coming home to my body, you know, and as you had said, yes, my early childhood traumatic experiences had me just say, this isn't safe, I'm out of here, you know, and that's where I was very comfortable living, you know, and so this being here um, was is you know just so profound, right, when I learned how to do that. And to do that, and this is why I think it's so hard for people, is because we are going to touch those places of our trauma. We're going to touch the places of the feelings that we have told ourselves or someone told us that we don't have the ability to experience, right? Our wisdom, our whole truth is in our body. And so when we make that commitment to be on this path and to do this work, and I'm all about, we don't need anything external to help us with this except for another person, right? We don't need anything to put anything in our body to do this. We have everything we need. We just need to learn how to stay in the moment and watch the thoughts and let ourselves know that the thoughts are not true, and that I do have the ability to feel this and to be with this. And again, little by slowly, right? Not to bypass any part of ourselves. We're in this human body to, I mean, it's magnificent. It's so glorious,
Mm.
you know, and not to bypass any of it, but to feel it. We have the ability to feel. That in itself is extraordinary. And we go to great lengths to not feel, right? To put something in front of us feeling, you know. And so the more that we can come into that, and absolutely it's got to come from healing our own wounds, healing our own trauma, healing whatever blocked us, healing, you know, and it's an ongoing journey, you know.
Can I
So
jump in? Can I
yeah.
jump in? I have a question for you that I get. I'm with you. You know, we are very much in a similar vibration here. But I'm curious about about when you say thoughts aren't real. Can you explain that to people who are like, "What do you mean my thoughts aren't real?"
Mm. Well, yes. Okay. So I'm going to give you an example. When I had my studio, one of the things that, you know, having the studio was just a joy. It was a dream I didn't know that I actually had, you know, that came about. And I got
Mm,
to do all sorts of things in the studio that were very powerful for me. And one of those was teaching um, these children, kids, high risk kids that were in foster care. And
mm,
so they would come to the studio, and me and a colleague would teach them yoga how to be connected, how to be present, how to be mindful. And so it was one day we would teach the boys and we would teach the girls, and it was one day the girls were there, and it was a very challenging day. And there was, of course, resistance. There was all the stuff that comes up when you're teaching this population. And it was such a hard day that I walked away from there thinking, what are you doing? You should not be doing this. I mean, just every single doubt that I had ever had in my life came up in that moment, and I went home in a very low place, a place where I was, again, in self-loathing, judgment, criticism of myself, thinking that I was imposter, all the things. And so that night, I came home and the thought would come up, you're no good at this. You shouldn't be doing this. And I said out loud, that simply is not true. And then the thought would come again, another second. And I would say out loud, that simply is not true. And that became a practice. And that's something I share with people I work with, to start doing that, because that thought is not true. That thought is fear-based. That thought comes from my wound, and whatever happened in that practice that brought that to the surface, it was then for me to start healing. And I cannot heal from this mind and all the thoughts going on that are constantly telling me that I am not enough.
That just gave me the chills. Yes, I don't know if you know, but I'm writing a book on awakening integration, and I just was, and I'm releasing meditation cards. I'll share all that with you too. And I was just writing about that. It was in one of the cards actually that goes with the book. I think the card is like self-healing. And it was that you can't heal from the mind alone. That was like the biggest answer, because if that's not true from a yogic perspective, like there's a sutra, right? Yoga chitta vritti nirodha, right? So which means the modification of the mind is yoga, which means not to identify with what you think as who you are or what you need or what you want, because it's a tricky beast. It's a wild animal. And also the mind is not ours alone too. That's a whole nother thing. Like you think it's your thoughts, but that's a whole psychological thing. But how the negative self-talk, the imposter syndrome, the I'm not good, I'm not enough, is not true. But maybe I am so wonderful is not true either. I'm better. Yeah. I'm experienced. I'm 20 years this. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to myself. But take it if it's true for you. We also do the opposite as a mask to convince ourselves, mentally that we're enough and that we're worthy, when we can be an asshole and still be worthy. Pardon my New York accent. It's like we are all of it and we are none of it. Right. So what's interesting is, when we go into the yogic so much is interesting, but as we go into the yogic teachings, I've had to sort through things that don't give me the whole picture, because the yoga that we learn in the West and the yoga teachings and the sutras and what my guru and other gurus have established here is the left-handed path, the right-handed path, the left-handed path, right? So it's more like coming mostly for ascetics, not as much for householders. So we've had to fill in a lot of that. We get to fill in other pieces spiritually, right? Like therapy, recovery, like there are things that yoga alone doesn't cover, right? Like, you are also a unique, beautiful person. You're not just a unique, it's not just your spirit and God that's everything. You are not separate from that. So your body is a sacred temple. And that's Ayurveda, really. I mean, that's like it exists in the tradition, but in the yoga schools that are like asana based schools, there's not as much of there's conflicting information, right? And so when I hear people, which is what I did in my 20s, like be like, God knows I don't know, like all the time, it can be like, well, what do you feel? What do you want? What do you need? What do you like? And I feel like in this time, we are learning what it means to live in a healthy way with our lower chakras. We are cleaning out all that survival mode and all that, the illusion of disconnection and the fear. And like, that's the benefit for me of doing psychosomatic work and navigating through negative emotional responses is to be able to create a healthy foundation in my body, my lower chakras, where, you know, God bless my lineage. And in the lineage, when I got deeper in, the teachings were like, never hang out below your heart chakra, you
Mm,
know, like stay here. And
mm,
like, but, and then
mm,
like eat a healthy diet and then physically be agile. And then like, that's not the whole picture. Um, that's why it's so helpful to talk with people like you, because we need integrative teachings to be able to digest so much different information, you know, that's coming. And
yeah.
I love to hear anything that comes up for you. And then if you want to talk about what you see in the community that you're in, and I'd love to hear also what shifted out of you owning a yoga school as well, why that
Mm,
ended, if you want to
okay.
share. Yeah.
Well, there's something I say, and you know, to my students and to people, and that probably has them go, okay, bye bye. But I say we ought to all be doing first chakra work every day, all the
Mm-hmm.
time,
Mm-hmm.
all of us, because we do. I mean, this is like, no, let's go here, let's go here, let's go here. You know, I just don't want to feel all that. I don't want to be in that mundane, Carrie. I don't want to do that, you know, work. And it's like, but that's where the joy comes. It's grounded there. The roots of joy come in there, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and yoga teaches us that the wisdom is in our heart and the head bows to the heart. Nothing in yoga says get rid of the head, get rid of the intellect. No, but when I'm aligned, when I'm connected, when I'm in my body, then the head is
Exactly.
aligned in the heart, and I'm so clear. I'm creative. I have an understanding. I feel the joy that's, you know, rooted. I'm rooted in. Um,
Well,
yeah. So
You know about Taoism. You know, do you know about Taoism at all? Have you studied Taoist or Qigong? Yeah.
yeah,
So there's the three Dantians. There's a lower Dantian, the middle Dantian, and the upper Dantian. The three
yeah,
jewels, all equally as important.
all
That's why the
equally.
Taoists are all trying to ground all the yogis.
Yeah, yeah, you know, and then also, you know, I think, and I share this a lot too, or did that, like there is, when you're a teacher, you know, people are going to come in, they're going to have that experience um, of wow, you know, what happened? I just like feel awakened, and they start to put you on a pedestal. And so as the teacher, there's this fine, fine, fine line that we have to continually be navigating to not let ourselves go up there. And we've
Yeah.
watched in our communities how that's lines been crossed and that ego has come into play and lots of harm has been done, you know. So again,
Yeah.
when I teach, it's like, no, I'm right here, you know.
I
Yes, I
love
have
that
this.
so much. Sorry. I
Go
just have
ahead.
so many insights. First of all, grounding in your first chakra means getting in your first chakra means grounding. And
Yeah,
yoga asana works with the anamaya kosha, it works with the physical body,
right.
right? So, excuse me. So duh, not duh to you, but like duh to that, to people who are trying to avoid that. Um, yeah. Anyway, there's other stuff, but yeah, amazing. Keep going.
Perfect. Yeah, and so then you asked, you know, how did I the studio, you know. And so the studio, when I opened it, and this was something that happened as well, that my son and I, the Marianne Williamson quote, you know, who are you not to? Who are you not to?
Yeah.
So we would constantly say that to each other. Who are you not to do this? Who, you know, so that was part of
Will you
opening the studio
explain
for
that for
me.
anyone who's never heard what that
Oh,
means?
sure. You know, our deepest fear is not that we are um,
Inadequate,
inadequate. Yep. Our
beyond,
deepest
yeah,
fear is that we're powerful. We ask
beyond.
ourselves, who am I to be, you know, talented, fabulous, you know, who are you not to be? Who are you not to do what you are meant to do? You know, and it's always my fear, you know, because I'm very
And the,
comfortable being inadequate. I'm very comfortable being in my less than and keeping myself small, but I am not comfortable with being powerful, you know, and so that's really been my journey. And when I opened the
which,
studio, oh, go ahead.
let me jump in again.
Mhm.
It brings me into this teaching that I realized many years ago because I had a temporary school called the Starseed Leadership School with my partner who passed. And we would play with that teaching. And
Mm,
what I realized was it's such an ego. Actually, there's a big ego in thinking that you're inadequate. oh,
Oh,
I'm
yes.
just a little thing. Who
Yeah.
am I? There's actually,
Huge
you're
ego.
actually keeping, you're hiding your gifts, being like, oh, the world doesn't want it. And there's actually a big false ego associated with playing small that
Mhm.
people think is so righteous and subservient, that probably comes from, generations of trying to stay safe, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, okay. So I
It
had to
absolutely is ego.
chime
It's
in on that
ego
one.
either way, you know,
Right, it's ego either way, right? And
ego either
and
way.
and so we what we adapt, and then we try to be, you know, more, better, when really guru means the remover of obstacles, right? So the
Yeah.
remover of darkness. So it's like, really, I have another story that's way too personal to share publicly, but I'm going to share with you after
Okay.
about
Okay.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're yoga studio. So you're in a yoga studio. You have this beautiful, you're like, we're doing it. Who are we not to do this?
Who am I not? You know, and I had
And
that on
it's incredible. And
our
you're like,
sign
oh my God, I
outside.
didn't know I always wanted this. This is what I always
Yes.
wanted. And
Yes.
then,
And so 12 years. And
mhm,
at the 9-year mark, I decided I kept getting this message that I'm supposed to get bigger. And, you know, I'm like, oh, I don't know what that means, but okay. So it came that the lease that I was in, it wasn't going to work. And so it was like, oh, here's my sign that I'm supposed to move. And so
mm,
October 2019, I started the move. It took us 6 months to build out. I bought a whole, invested. And I was married to the studio. It's my beloved. It was my beloved, so it was my
mm,
everything. And so we did it. We moved. Our
oh,
opening date was April 1, 2020. So it was just me. Um, and there's a little writing in my book about that. And so it brought up all the fears and all the stuff. And so I had to rebuild, and we did. And about 3 years into that, I just got a message one day from the universe that said, you know what, honey, it's time for you to let this go. And I'm like, and with that,
mm,
like other things had been let go that I had been doing through the studio. Like I felt like I'm not sure I want to do any more teacher trainings and all this. And so I had to listen. And I was first, of course, my fear fought it and said, I don't want to do this. No, anything else, I'll let go of anything else, but not this. I always try to argue
wow.
with the universe, and it was just
Mhm,
like so clear, like you've got to let this go. It's time. And I'm like,
mm,
but this was the plan, it's going to make me cry, but it's like, this was the
mm,
plan to stay here, and do
mm,
this. And it's like, no. So
oh,
that was,
that
I
was
let the
clear.
studio go.
And I want to acknowledge whatever you're feeling, and
Thank you.
and thank you for putting in more than 100% to serve your community, and also honor the impetus that you had, um, and thank you for showing us vulnerability, um, and what it looks like to express some grief. Yeah,
Yeah.
so healthy. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think
That's what it was. It is. And
mm,
still, I can't say that, it's been 3 years, and has it? I think it has.
yeah,
And
it's 2026 and it's May 2026. Yeah.
yeah, it was 2023. So yeah. So, and I'm still in the process of it, like, okay, now what do you want me to do? And I do know this, I will say this, that like my book, I'm just going to show my book.
Show your book.
My
Pros
I
on the
I
path.
wouldn't have done my book if I still had the studio. And so that I do know. And so that gives me the hope that like there's so much more waiting, so much more waiting.
Is there a poem that you'd like to read from your book?
Well, it's not a book of poetry. It's prose on the path. So it's a book of writings. It's
Okay.
really a compilation of writings that I did over the years. And then with each writing, there's contemplation, and there's breath, and there's actions
Mm.
to take. So,
Oh, great, great.
but yeah, I could read a little. I'll read a part that's called Spring Joy, and
Mm.
I won't read the whole thing, but it basically was, spring is, we're here in spring, and I love spring, and it challenges me to the core. It's messy, it's unpredictable, And so this was what this was about. And
Mm.
I'd been, I had done a chakra workshop with my students, and I had, a new mantra, new affirmation that I was going to accept my power, embrace my new confidence, and surrender. Right. So here's the piece. Despite my defiance, spring persisted in her invitation into the unknown, continued to invite me to open, to be surprised and delighted. Imagine my astonishment, me in the dentist chair in April, where I'd said, I'm not going to the dentist chair. There I called upon spring. I sought the perseverance, the ability to be free and unattached. This led me to a miraculous place. My rebelliousness, my fear began to soften, and a new, unexpected weather pattern arose. I experienced rain, tears flowing, and a place to be grounded. Clouds, ignorance, misperception, and acceptance, the truth revealed. Winds, fears in many forms, and a place of support to be with the moment as it was. Sun, clarity, awareness, and my ability to embrace my power and my strength. As the fluctuations moved around me, I was able to be present, able to make choices from a strong center. I felt empowered through surrender and open to the vulnerability that presence brings. My voice appeared in the most confident way. As I embraced my power, my lack of faith diminished. I let go and surrendered into the unknown oscillations that I had been so desperately fearing, desperately fighting. As I surrendered, a profound, deep, and perfect peace arose within me. In that moment, the ground had me and the ease held me. And suddenly I was the beautiful spring, rise and fall.
Mm.
And then it goes on. So,
You are a beautiful writer. Thank you
oh,
so
thank
much
you.
for
Thank you.
sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the message at the end was really deep because it showed me so much that I can identify with when we return to practice, like really, I had a teacher who used to say, don't call it practice, be it, claim it. And I also have had elders that really speak in oneness language. But my editor from my book doesn't really like it. So she's very spiritually awakened, but she's a Taoist too. She doesn't like these absolute statements because she acknowledges that the human practice, the spiritual path in the body is really about returning and learning and growing, and it becomes a lifestyle. It becomes your life. It's like
Yes. Yes.
it becomes your life. It's not
Mhm.
like, oh, I went to therapy and now I'm done. Once you start to wake up to what the body wants to tell you, you suffer if you ignore it, and you suffer anyway if you ignore it, but
Mhm.
you're even more aware. So thank you for demonstrating that today with us.
Mm.
We have a lot more to chat about than we can get into today, but is there anything else you'd like to share before we close out our session?
Mm. No, I think that just, I know that one of the things that you said was like living more grounded, more joy, more present, more alive. And for me, that's like it's being in the body. We tend to think that being in joy and being in, living in joy means that I'm not going to feel sadness. I'm not going to feel, all of the other things that I'm given to feel. And that's what that reading is really is about, that and that we can bring into our life. It's not an either or, it's not a black and white. It's like embodied, present. We get this amazing and. I can be sad, I can be in grief, I can feel that over the studio, not having the studio anymore. And I can feel the joy of being here with you today, and the joy of the possibility of getting to share my book and, my words and life. And so I think that that's that we know that joy is available to us in any moment, if we can be there. And I think as well that people, that will come to me or I work with and say, I thought this was done. I thought this was over. I thought it was like, oh, hopefully not, let's go to the next layer, because that's what I believe too, that we're just given what we can do in the moment, and more is going to be revealed for us. And it's this joyous, beautiful path
Thank
and
you.
journey.
Yeah, thank you so much. For those of you who are listening and have more questions, absolutely feel free to post them below. And Carrie's website is listed in the notes as well. So reach out to her. Um, if you have questions, because you work remotely too, right? And privately with people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My work is very similar. It's deep somatic and spiritual work. It's very similar. So I really get the value of it. Um, there's this piece that you mentioned around the body being like not being the mind and like n- being in the body as a solution. And I want
Mm.
to add just one little piece before we close out to people that um, it doesn't mean you can never just chill out, what, eat popcorn and watch Netflix, because we do need to like just take a break sometimes from life. But once you learn the tools to decode whatever you're feeling and maybe understand what you need or what hasn't been seen or met before, it moves pretty quickly
Mm.
as we saw with you today. And it becomes lighter in my experience. And I've been through so many dark nights of the soul that have lasted, years or months or days or hours or minutes. Dark sides. Now I'm calling them dark souls of the moment because it could be anything.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, you know, but that we're afraid to go into these dark places, but actually there's this great liberation that happens when you get to know what's actually available to you. So
Mm.
thank you for this honest and real conversation and for your time.
Ooh,
Thank you
blessings.
so
Thank you
much.
so much. I appreciate being here with you.
Thank you.